So welcome to Fibro Pulse. I'm Linda. We have a very interesting topic to talk about today, but before we begin, I'd like to thank you all for being here. This is our first time doing this on Facebook. The last couple weeks we tried it on YouTube, and we want to try both, see what works best. Our mission is to face fibromyalgia together, so we thought that these live chats might be a great way to do that so that we can engage in real time with each other, interacting and sharing our experiences. So feel free to ask questions, respond, share your own tips throughout the discussion. And thank you for participating both live and afterwards. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so today we're talking about having a social life with fibromyalgia. Obviously, it can be difficult navigating and maintaining social relationships with fibro. So there's additional challenges and things to consider when you have fibromyalgia. Your thoughts can work against you, causing anxiety. And it's the added difficulty of having an invisible condition that people can't maybe recognize just by looking at you. So too often people end up losing connections and feeling isolated when they have fibromyalgia, and often end up feeling in a lose-lose situation where there's no good options as far as wanting to socialize, but feeling nervous too. We'll get into that more later. So what can we do to adapt our socializing to work with fibromyalgia? So I've got 3 tips, we'll get to it towards the end, that can help you make those situations a little bit easier for you. Things that, I was diagnosed in 2000, so it's still difficult for me all this many years later, but I have come up with a few coping mechanisms that we're going to share today. And I'd love to see if you have any things that you use. You can just type them in the chat box. If you have anything you use to better navigate social situations. All right, so how are we doing here? All right. So what does it look like? So when a fibro person gets invited to go out with a friend, or is invited to an event, I found and heard this echoed from other people that the train of thought that goes through our minds is different than maybe before we had fibromyalgia or from other people. So for example, where'd I go? My place. Okay. So what does it look like? So we put some things about this in our article. We were releasing an article a few days before and then having these discussions. So you can always check the article out and think of some ideas that you might want to talk about in the discussion. So for example, like, will everyone, does everyone at this event know that I have a chronic pain condition? Do they already have that awareness? Is it worth telling people in advance? What will be the physical expectations of me at this event? Like, how long is it going to last? Are we going to be in more than one place? How long will I have to, would I kind of expect to be, sitting up for, things like that? Will I be able to, what activities will people be doing? So will I be able to keep up with what's happening at the event? Are we intending to, we're gonna, sit and have a quiet lunch, and then we're going to do this other thing that might be more difficult? Will I be holding the whole group back if I can't keep up, is there, is there a spot for me to like sit and rest or take a little side option if I can't keep up with the group? This is an interesting one too. A lot of us eat, specific foods can cause flare-ups. So a lot of us have found that eliminating certain foods from our diet can make a difference in our pain. So sometimes within social situations, you might feel pressured to, like join in. Oh, is everyone going to be eating the same things? And will you feel like you're being a bad guest if you don't eat something that is going to potentially cause a flare up or make you feel, worse over the days following the event? So that can be stressful. Locations of restrooms, how far away from my home will I be able to get away if I am not feeling well? So those are the kinds of things that come up in people's minds, or I know come up in my mind sometimes when I'm being invited to an event. It's not just, oh yeah, that sounds great, I'd love to just go. You think of all these potential things that could go wrong, and that causes a lot of stress. So let's take a look at that. I talked about, I'm calling it like the argument in your mind. I find that I have two voices fighting with each other in my head. When I get invited to something, I go, on one hand, it's really nice that people thought of me and have asked me to go out. And you think, oh, I've been staying in a lot lately, I really should try to go to something. But on the other hand, as the event draws near, you can start to get additional stress and worry, dreading like what could go wrong, that you might be uncomfortable or even miserable, or kind of have a bit of a breakdown, or feel foolish. So it can feel a little bit like just a game of chance, like you're rolling the dice every time. Sometimes it's going to turn out great, but you can feel like, okay, I have these options. I can go and potentially it'll all turn out okay, or I could go and it doesn't turn out okay, or I feel like I have to leave early, or I could insult someone or something like that, or I stay home and then I miss out on having a social connection, and sometimes feeling like, oh, you stay at home and you go, oh, I really could have gone to that. I feel okay. And, was I playing it too safe by, not accepting and choosing to go. Okay. So on top of that, so talking about, people's reactions, we'll get into more of how to handle that later, but there's the, I suppose, added thing that I kind of a side note of the people who knew you before. It can be difficult, not just difficult with like new people having to explain potentially, oh, I have this condition and something like this might be difficult for me, but also, or sometimes even more so, with the people who knew you before you had fibromyalgia, because and that includes yourself, because activities that you used to love to participate in might be difficult now. So for the people, other people who knew you before, they may have they're looking at you and they may say, well, but you look the same, you don't look different. And it might be difficult for them to process the fact that you've changed. And that's one of the big difficulties of having an invisible illness, is people can't see on you that something's wrong. So they look and they're like, you're the same person you were before. You used to love doing this. Why don't you love doing this? And or they kind of forget you're doing the activity and you're struggling, but they don't even remember that there's something different now. So they just assume and keep moving and don't check in with you and see how you're feeling. And they may even take your lack of participation personally. They may feel like, oh, you're just making an excuse because, you know, you don't want to be their friend anymore or something like that. They may not understand that you're genuinely struggling because, again, they can't see it with their own eyes. So on top of that, it's also something you have to deal with within yourself. The grief of grieving over what you once had. So there might be activities that you really loved before. I use an example in the article about hiking that, you know, you may really love to go hiking and you may still really love to go hiking, but it's so difficult for you, or you have to do it within a very limited scope. And that can be really depressing. It can be very upsetting that you can't participate the way you once did, or you feel like it's just not worth doing at all. But inside, it's still very raw, very sad that you can't do something that you really love to do. So I just wanted to make that kind of side note of like, not just meeting with new people, not trying to make new connections, but also with people you knew before, there's an added level of difficulty. So every type of social situation has a bit of stress around it. And that ends up making you feel like you have no good options. So many times I feel like the damned if you do, damned if you don't. So if I go out, I'm not sure if I'm gonna feel good, but I can like go, okay, I'll just go out anyway. Sometimes the anxiety itself can just weigh you down and make it difficult. You're worried that something will go wrong. So there's a lot of knowing that there's all these potential things that could make it difficult for you to be present and enjoy yourself within the social situation can weigh on you itself. But you know, you could potentially have a good time. Okay. So, and then if you decline and you decide to stay home, you have like the relief of like, okay, I'm just gonna stay home. Like, I'm making this choice. I'm doing that. But you can have regrets for doing that too. You go like, I did it again. I'm missing out on another opportunity to make friends, to meet people, to connect and not feel lonely. So it can feel like there's only like this one little sliver of like, if everything just goes well and I feel okay, and you know, and even then you might say, well, there's even the relief of like, oh, if I don't go out, then like I'll get invited to fewer things, so I won't have to say no in the future. So it can just feel like there's no good options. Like each one has stresses. So we'll talk about what we can do with that too. All right, so here we go. What can you do? All right, one of my top favorite things, which it seems so clear, like so simple and so obvious, but ask questions. So, okay. So before giving a yes or no, my main go-to is just to ask more questions. You can feel like someone asks you and you're like, oh, you want to just be able to be like, yes, I'm gonna come. That sounds great. But you could go, oh, can you tell me a little bit more about what we'll be doing, what I can expect? For example, a huge thing is knowing what the venue is going to be. So where are we going to? How? And then once you know what it is, with the internet, it's easy to look up the place and say, okay, first of all, is this a place I already know? If you know it and you feel comfortable with the place, that can be a huge bonus. You're like, oh, I know that place. I know their menu. I feel comfortable it's all good. But if you're not sure about it, you can look, okay, how far is it from my house? How am I going to get there? What is on the menu? A great thing to do is look up the menu online beforehand and find a few items that you know fit whatever dietary restrictions you have, won't make you feel unwell while you're at the social gathering or afterwards, and have a few choices in case they're out of one. But that can make a huge difference, not to have the stress of sitting down at your table say you're going to a restaurant, sitting down, opening up the menu and having to try to read that while you're trying to talk to people. That can make a huge difference. You can even consider going and scoping out the venue beforehand. Like, let's say it's at a restaurant, you're going to have brunch. You can choose to have brunch or coffee there in the days before the event. So then you become familiar with the with the venue. You know what you maybe even try the dish that you think you like, and you just get the same thing the other day because you know exactly what to expect. And most importantly for me is like finding out where the bathrooms are. So if you're having any bathroom emergencies, or you just need a moment to like gather yourself and gather your thoughts, you can go somewhere private and have a quiet moment to yourself. So I feel a lot less stressed if I know, and by going to the venue, you can also find out like, yeah, do I feel cold? Should I make sure I bring like an extra sweater or have like full leggings on or things like that? So once you're in the environment, you can check those things out. And I know I feel infinitely better about going out to a social situation if I know what to expect. It just takes taking a lot of those unknowns off the table can take your stress level down significantly. Thinking about how you're getting there, getting to the event and leaving too. Like, are you driving yourself? Also, how late at night are you going to be getting tired? If someone else is taking you, are they aware of your condition and willing to leave early if you need to? Things like that. How many people will be attending? This is an interesting one, actually, because on one hand, you'd think that, having fewer people, it's less noise and less interaction. But on the other hand, large events can be really great too, because there's a lot of anonymity. You could be talking to someone and be like, oh, I have to go to this thing, and walk off and have like a quiet moment to yourself. Whereas if you're at a table with only a few people, the conversation can be a little more intense. So interestingly enough, sometimes bigger events can be better for getting a little more time to yourself, having more quiet moments. And how long is it going to last? So just asking these questions of, if someone invites you to something, asking these questions of your host, and just doing a little bit of research so that maybe you can take a few of those things like off your mind. Because I feel like there's a tipping point. You go, okay, oh, there's all these unknowns, and if I can just take a few of them off, you can reach a point where you go, yeah, I think I can do this. If I kind of have a sense of some of my outs, if I need to leave, if I need to take some time to myself, I have enough space to do those things, and I feel like I can give a yes and give this one a try. So I just feel that anytime you can take a few things off that list that you're worried about, it makes a big difference in your ability to say yes with confidence. So along those lines, talking to the host or invitee. So like if someone's asking you out and out to something, and you think about, do they know about your condition? If they don't, you might want to take the time to talk to at least that person about what you're going through. And here's why. So most people, you don't have to get super explicit as to what you experience, but just talking about in general, you have a chronic pain syndrome or condition, and sometimes, you know, you get fatigued, or you might have some difficulties or need to leave early. Okay, so most people are actually very kind and receptive to that, and they want to help. So you might feel like, oh, you're, you know, inconveniencing them, but people actually often, for the most part, are very receptive to it. It can also be helpful that you might not have to, if you tell the host, you have now an ally in this. So instead of, you know, maybe everyone's going, oh, we should all go to this thing next, you should stay. If the host knows that that you have these health problems, they might, you know, kind of help you out if there is something more, like or if you have to leave. So it can help to have an ally, and maybe you don't have to tell everyone at the event, like, oh, I have this condition, you know, or if you're feeling stressed, you might not have to just bring it up. You could quietly talk to the host and say, you know, I'm getting really tired. Thank you so much. This has been great. I have to sneak off now. So you can talk to them too when you're feeling a bit stronger in the beginning, and they may even offer options for things that would help make the situation more comfortable for you. So that's really great. Yeah, so then you're not in this position where you're feeling unwell and trying to explain yourself to a whole group of people. You can tell them beforehand and see how they react, and have them ready in case you're not feeling great. So yeah, like I said, keeping it simple. You don't have to tell them everything, but it can also help from their feelings getting hurt, because then it's not like the day of, they're busy, they're trying to socialize with everyone, and you say like, oh, I have to leave. They might think that something went wrong and feel bad about it. But if you've primed them beforehand, if they already know that this is a potential, then you're far less likely to insult them or hurt their feelings. So that can make a big difference. All right, so, and point number 3, what can you do? Do it on your own terms. So flip the script and be more proactive. It can often feel like, I know this can sound a little bit crazy, but it can often feel like you're, you know, fielding invitations from others, like, and they're setting it up and they're making the rules. Well, you can also try to be proactive, and on a day when you're feeling well, message someone and ask them to do something, just to keep, like, flex that muscle, you know. So look for friends who are understanding and receptive. So as you go about this process, see which friends are the most accommodating to that. Some people will be perfectly fine and totally understanding of that, you know, you need to go to places closer to your home, or that you may decide at the last minute you just don't have the energy to do something. Some people are very flexible with that, and if they know what's happening with you, you know, those are good friends, people who respond to the fact that this isn't always easy for you. And in addition to that, one great thing I've found is to just make fibro friends. I've had a few friends in my lifetime that also had fibro or other health conditions where it's difficult for them too. Granted, it can be extremely difficult to find a time when you're both feeling well enough to go out. But I had a friend over the last few years where we would just we both had fibro, and we would just kind of message each other like, hey, like, let's see, maybe we'll do something tomorrow, you know, in the middle of the day. It would be a little bit like vague about the plans, but it's like, oh, maybe tomorrow in the day sometime would be good. And then we would text each other leading up to our intended meeting time, and just check in, like, are you still feeling okay? Are you tired? Are you still feeling good? and touch base with each other. And we had lots of great like brunch, lunch, not too late in the evening or not too early in the morning type meetups. And we had a great time, and we would just it was so nice to know that we could, it actually made it easier because it took that stress off. We could just relax with each other and talk and enjoy our time. And if she said, this has been great, but I'm just really getting tired, she knew there was no judgment from me if she had to go home after, we spent a couple hours together, and it's like there's no expectation of more time. So if you can find fibro friends in real life, it's really great to just have this knowing in each other, to be able to look at the other person and be like, you get it. I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to feel guilty. I don't have, we just appreciated the time we did get to spend together and all that. So, what I was going to say too, that, along those lines, all of this, like the internet has made this infinitely easier because you can find other people who have fibro, and there might be, depending on how big your city is, you might be able to meet up with other people who are dealing with chronic issues, or find friends who can relate. Or another option to that is having social interactions like this on the internet, so that you can be in the comfort of your home. You can even turn your camera off, or just sit and watch a chat conversation, or participate in, some type of forum or ongoing thing, and connect with people a bit that way. And sometimes those relationships can even translate into something more personal, whether that's friends you make on, say you make a fibro friend on Facebook, you may become Facebook friends and then have private talks between the two of you. Or even you might meet someone on here who's in your town, and you can actually do that and meet up in real life. So the internet has made this a lot easier for us, because we can connect with people we can relate to, even from the comfort of our own home, without having to leave and go out to the world. So those are all the things. Just to quickly recap some of your options. So fibro folks have additional things to consider when accepting social invitations. So, which can include arguing with ourselves and grief over what we can no longer do, and feeling that damned if you do, damned if you don't. But there are things we can do to make it easier and to still maintain a social life, even with these limitations. So work on communicating with others about your condition. Practice it. Practice just say what you might say, and look for understanding people who respond well and are empathetic when you tell them about your condition, and not dismissive. Ask questions about what you can expect at an event to reduce your anxiety and make it easier to give that yes answer. And try alternatives, like setting up your own thing, having something that's close to your house or at your home, whatever is most comfortable for you. Maybe one-on-one is easier for you. Find people and find people who can relate and understand. So try to build connections with the people who are understanding about what you're going through, and try to find ways to socialize that work for you. So I don't know if we have any questions or comments. You can add them in later, because it's hard for me to like set up a time and know that I'm going to feel well. To sit here in front of a camera. So I'm sure that because of the nature of our community, there's going to be a lot more of this. We interact when we can, and that's another way of keeping our social connections alive, and doing something that's suitable for socializing with fibromyalgia. So just in closing, whether you're here live or watching this later, thank you for participating. We'll be posting this discussion. This is our first one on Facebook, but we'll be posting on Facebook and YouTube and seeing how this goes. So like I said, we're trying to determine what's most effective for having these types of conversations. I know live can be difficult for all of us, but we'd love to know what you think. What types of discussions would be helpful for you, because we want to make content that's useful and that allows us to express ourselves and brings people together. Because as I said before, like we're trying to, our mission is for us to face fibromyalgia together. So like, we're not alone. We have other people to lean on, to get advice from, to get information from, and we're trying to bring people together so that we can share what works and be able to connect. So if you sign up for our newsletter, you'll get all the updates, and follow us on social media, because we do different things on different platforms. So many of you might not know, but for example, on Instagram, we have quite a big community, and we do discussions throughout the week, just posts where people can posts about sometimes just about whatever our topic is for the week, and also questions, and we get a lot of answers and interaction when we post questions on there. So if you come follow us on Instagram, you can be part of that conversation, and you can participate whenever you feel the desire to. There's no specific set time, so that's an ongoing conversation. So just check the different social media platforms. We're on all of them: Pinterest, and obviously Facebook. We have YouTube. Come follow us, because we're having different discussions in different formats, and that's been really exciting. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye.